you guys, it's Nikita Lene back with another video. Today I just want to give you guys the scoop on my first travel assignment, what it's like working as a crisis travel nurse, and you know, all the things that I learned as a brand new travel nurse. So if you're interested, stick around. So one of the primary questions I have received about my travel assignment is why? Why did I choose to take a travel assignment? For me, it was, had a lot to do with my job. There's a lot going on at my job at the time, and quite frankly, I just wasn't happy. I was ready for adventure. I was ready for something new. I recognized that as a nurse at my job, I just wasn't happy. I recognized that I wasn't going to get the career progression that I really wanted at that job. I had kind of like met my peak. Not necessarily saying that I couldn't have learned more or done more, but working in a smaller hospital, sometimes you recognize that you want to go further, you want to do more, and you want to see more, and sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone to be able to do that. On top of that, I think a lot of nurses have recognized during the time of COVID that we faced a hard time. We have gone through a lot, especially at the beginning of 2020 when all of the pandemic situation happened. And I think a lot of hospitals really showed how they feel about nurses, how they feel about their healthcare staff. And it's made a lot of nurses kind of take a step back and reflect. It makes you really reflect on your values, your goals, what you hope to accomplish, and how your current job is really helping you to get to that point. So for me, I had to do some soul searching. I had to sit down, do my pros and cons list like I always do when I have a big decision to make. And I recognized that my job did not make me feel valued. I did not feel like my voice was heard at that job. I did not feel like anyone really cared at my job, to be honest with you. I did not feel safe. I feel like there was a lot of issues going on that I did not really foresee an end to. So usually when you think about issues that you're dealing with in your career, if there are short-term issues and there's going to be some type of resolution to them, then I would say, okay, let me stick it out and kind of work through it. But I did not really see any short-term or even a long-term resolution to some of the issues that I was dealing with at my job. And so I just decided to cut my losses and start on a new adventure, do something different that was going to give me more opportunity and more growth in my career. Alright, so when you think of travel assignments, you think about going like at least to another state, you know, getting on the road, taking a long road trip to get to where you're going. My first travel assignment really wasn't that far away from home. So as most of you know, I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My first travel assignment was in Paris, Texas. Yeah, it's literally like an hour and a half away from Dallas, right? Initially, we were assigned to go out to Mount Pleasant, which once again is not too much further away from Dallas. And once we got there, we were kind of dispersed out to other facilities that were in need at the time. So I signed up to work in the ICU, working as a COVID ICU nurse. And I guess one of the pros, and it can also be viewed as a con, of working in a crisis nursing position is that you float to like wherever they need you in the hospital. So during that time, although I was assigned to the ICU needs always came first. If they needed me to work there, if the census matched, they really needed a nurse, then that's where I would be working during that shift. Sometimes the census would, you know, kind of dip a little bit low, and their nurses that are staff nurses always have priority and they do not float. So we would be sent to other units. I had the pleasure of working in every unit that we could possibly get floated to during my time there. So pretty much we worked everywhere except where there's like exposure to babies. So no L&D, no NICU, and no peds. Those are pretty much the only places in the hospital that were kind of like off limit. Additionally, like the cath lab, they have their own nurses, but other than that, we worked everywhere else in the hospital. So I worked our regular ICU, COVID ICU, CV ICU. I worked med surg, regular med surg, COVID med surg. I worked step down. I worked on the ortho unit. I worked in the rehab unit. I think that's all the units. I think that's everywhere. But yeah, we were floated all over the hospital. So like I said, I was assigned to the ICU. That's what my badge said. That's where, you know, they always have priority. Oh, the other place I was floated to, the ED. I also had to work in the ED several times. So when I tell you they float you anywhere, the primary rule is that they look at your highest level of training as a nurse, and you can always be floated to a lower acuity, but you can't be floated to a higher acuity. So for me, being an ICU nurse, that's pretty much the highest acuity, meaning anybody else, any other clinic was fair game. Now for some of the med surg nurses, tele nurses, and things like that, they could be floated to other units except the ICU. So those are the primary rules. Those are the places I had the opportunity to work during my time there, during my 10 weeks there. So a typical day for me working as a COVID ICU nurse, I worked night shift, which was great for me. I originally was working days at my previous job, but I was in the process of trying to switch to night shift. I love nights, so I was really excited to be able to work on night shift. So typically we would report to the ICU, and that's where I would get my assignment. And like I said, we get floated to anywhere in the hospital. 9 times out of 10, they would want to use us in our department that we are assigned to. So most of the time I was working in the ICU. If there were COVID patients, then they would assign us to the COVID patients. It really just depends on how many patients there were, how many nurses there were working that night, how many COVID patients there were. So they would just kind of disperse us anywhere depending on those things, and however the supervisor did the scheduling during day shift. So we would just go to our normal assignments of wherever we are dispersed to, and kind of work from there. It's very similar to just a normal work day. If you're a nurse, you kind of know the flow. For me, I grab my blank piece of paper, I fold it in half, I go get a report from whoever the nurse is. At our location, we had PPE, like no questions asked. Every single unit had PPE. There was never a shift that went by that I had to, that I was worried about having the appropriate PPE. Every single day I had everything that I needed. Whether I was taking care of a COVID patient or I didn't have a COVID patient, they always have masks, they always have gowns, they always have everything that we need. The shield, the goggles, you had options. I mean, I think at the most there may have been 1 or 2 shifts where we ran out of PPE, but the supervisor would go to the distribution center and go get more for us for our particular unit. So that was a major blessing. There was never a question of, if my mask broke, like, oh, you can't get another one. Like, no, the PPE was always there and always available. So that was something that I was very, very, very grateful for. Because that is not always the case at all facilities. So I was very grateful for that. They weren't trying to hide PPE. You didn't have to go on a search. It wasn't like top secret covert mission where you have to beg, borrow, and steal to get an N95 mask. Or if you felt like you needed a new mask, it wasn't like, why do you want a new one? Why do you need a new one? PPE floweth in this hospital, and I was so grateful for that, especially considering how many COVID patients we were taking care of. So I was very, very, very grateful for that. So initially when I took this assignment, my goal was to work 2 to 3 weeks doing this travel assignment, and then to go back to Dallas I had previously accepted an agency position working at some of the bigger hospitals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I was going to float from location to location. I was hoping to work ICU and also work in the PACU because that's kind of the transition I was trying to make in my career at the time. And so my goal after I finished my travel assignment, these 2-3 weeks, was to go back to Dallas, finish my training, and pick up agency work. I even considered staying at my previous job and just doing PRN so that I can work between, as many facilities as I wanted to. I'd have the flexibility of making my own schedule, of picking which location I wanted to work at, because my previous job had 5 different hospitals that I was able to float between. I want to say it was 4 or 5, something like that. And then this new agency position would give me the opportunity to float between 4 to 5 different hospitals. And so I really wanted that flexibility. I wanted the opportunity to get out and network and figure out which hospital location was best for me and have the flexibility of making my own schedule. But, they say that when we make plans that God kind of laughs. I definitely went into this assignment with the mindset of, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I really thought that I was going to be working the full 3 weeks, 7 days a week straight, stuck in PPE for the full 12 hours, drenched in sweat. Like, I went in with worst case scenario, what is this job going to be like? And I went in with the mindset that I'm just going to bust my ass for these 3 weeks, and I'm going to come back to Dallas. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and then I'll get back into the flow of what my new life is going to look like. I think it's great that I went in with the mindset of preparing for the worst, because I was so pleasantly surprised for honestly the best case scenario. It was the complete opposite of what I mentally prepared myself for. So I was pleasantly surprised by how much I absolutely loved this assignment, you guys. So when I tell you, about 99.9% of the staff were amazing. They were so welcoming. They were very helpful. They were so grateful that we were there. And so every single day we came to work, it was a great experience. I really found myself learning a lot. I think that the knowledge that I was seeking and the experiences that I was seeking, I was able to find them. And I got to experience a lot in this new position, because going from working in an LTAC ICU to an acute care ICU, we were getting patients straight out of the ED. Now, my previous job working in the LTAC ICU, we did have some patients that were unstable. I did titrate drips. We had some critical patients, okay? I had art lines. We dealt with stuff like that. But we were getting a lot more of that in this ICU, okay? We're getting patients straight out of the ED who are critically unstable. And not all of your patients are, critically unstable, but because it is an acute ICU, I'd say probably 90 to 95% of our patients were critically ill, were problem solving, titrating multiple drugs. You have a lot of DKA patients. You have a lot of different things that you're dealing with on top of COVID. And so I got to see and do a lot of things. I learned a lot of things. When I tell you my previous job, I was titrating, maybe I'd have 2 drips. I titrate those 2 drips. Cool. I went from that to titrating 5 and 6 drips at a time. I mean, even I'm shooketh. It was how do I even put into words? The experience itself was just wow. The amount of skills and things that I learned, I definitely blossomed in this assignment, you guys. It was a phenomenal experience. Hands down, I am just so proud of myself because of the amount of growth in this assignment, staying flexible and staying in like this learning mode where I was willing and ready to learn at all times. It definitely helped me because I definitely learned a lot. And there were things the first week that I was so overwhelmed with, and I reflect on my last week there, my 10th week, like, these are things that I don't even sweat now. Like, I don't even sweat that anymore. I got this. And so just to see the amount of growth from beginning to end, I am so exceptionally proud of myself. I grew so much as a nurse. I truly flourished as a nurse. And we had amazing supervisors and leaders and other ICU nurses who really took me under their wing and taught me so much in this assignment. One of the night shift supervisors, Misty, shout out to Misty, she is phenomenal. She is so incredibly smart, so on top of her stuff. I learned so much from Misty. On top of everything that I learned as far as like my regular nursing skills, I recognized I was a little spoiled by the RT team that I had at my previous job, you guys, because although our respiratory therapists were kind of split between the floors of the hospital and their assignments on different halls, if I needed something, RT was there. So I know how to suction my patient. I know how to do, trach care and ET tube care and all of that stuff, okay? But when it came to the vent settings, I knew my vent settings, but we weren't like changing vent settings at my previous job. So in this new hospital, the RTs were split even further because it's a much bigger hospital. So you may have a respiratory therapist who's working in the ICU who's also down in L&D. So there could be a baby that just got delivered. That baby's going to be priority. You better figure out what's going on with your ICU patient on your own. And let me tell you, when you're dealing with all of these COVID patients, you are changing their vent settings, and like, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. You really have to know your stuff. And so I was definitely blessed to be working with people who were on top of it, who really were willing to not just tell me what to do, but show me, okay, this is what I see and this is what I would do, and these are my suggestions. These are the resources I use, and this is where you find things. Like, they were very hands-on with teaching and very hands-on with showing you things. And I'm so grateful for that because I'm not a tell me or do it for me type of person. It's like, show me one time so I can do it on my own. Teach me so that I can get it and I know what the heck I'm doing in the future, because you're not always going to be here to do it for me. I want to know. I want to learn how to do it. So I was very grateful for the people that I worked with, and it was a phenomenal learning experience. I really feel like I blossomed as a nurse. I learned so much, and I feel like I've grown. The growth that I attained in that 10 weeks is just, Lord knows how long it would have taken me to even see those types of experiences or see those types of diagnoses and clinical situations at my previous job. And the level of critically ill patients that I'm able to care for now as an ICU nurse, I feel like I could say that more confidently now. I'm an ICU nurse. It just blows my mind, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful that I stepped out of my comfort zone to accept this job. I definitely hesitated initially, like, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to know enough? Am I going to be smart enough? Am I going to be able to do this? And I really, in the back of my mind, had this backup plan of, if I'm not able to do this, then, I know that they can send me to med-surg. I know that they can send me the step-down unit. It is what it is. I'm not even going to get offended. But I went in there with an attitude of being willing and ready to learn, and they were willing and ready to teach, and I learned so much. And I'm just so grateful for the entire experience, you guys. I can't even speak highly enough about this facility, about the nurses, and not even just the nurses, but when I tell you all the healthcare professionals in this facility were freaking phenomenal. The nurses, the respiratory therapists, there's so many cool doctors and nurse practitioners that I met that took me under their wing, that just were willing to teach, and I absolutely loved that and I appreciated that. The x-ray techs, like everybody in this hospital was just so, like, it was such a high vibration, super dope environment to even work in and to experience. So I'm exceptionally blessed to have that experience, and like, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm so blessed that I got through this assignment, and I feel like a better nurse and a better person on the other side of it. So I want to record a completely separate video about all of the things I learned, as well as the differences between working in an LTAC ICU and an acute care ICU, just so that I don't miss anything, so that I'm able to go into more detail for anybody that's interested in making this transition or is thinking about accepting a job like this. But I do want to kind of give like a brief overview of some of the major things that I learned during this assignment. So one of the major things that I dealt with is, you know, dealing with COVID. There's a lot of people who had this disbelief about COVID. So I just want to thank everyone for watching another video. Thanks for joining me here today. Please stick around for more videos. My next video is going to be going over the pros and the cons of accepting a crisis travel nurse job. I'm going to kind of get into more details about my assignment and some of the pros and cons that I experienced during my 10-week assignment. Additionally, I am also going to have another video about me quitting my previous job, quitting my first nursing job, how that went down, why I decided to quit that job, and all of the details about that will be in that video. So if you are interested, I think the link should pop up. Is it here? Maybe here? I don't know. The link should pop up. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you guys will never miss another video. Like I said before, accountability is the word for the rest of 2020 and into 2021. So I will be posting more and more content. My goal is to give you guys 2 to 3 videos a week, at least for the next couple of months. I have so much catching up to do with you guys. So thanks again for joining me today, you guys. Have a great day.